But this could be a quick video. This is Dave's Burns Bison. You'd think it was made by Bison Guitars, but it's Burns Bison. And it's a strange looking thing. It's a reissue. I'm not quite sure exactly what year it's reissued, but well, it's familiar. It's definitely a Burns. It's definitely a Bison. It has a Burns bridge on it. Trisonics pickups. Has some interesting settings. No selector switch exactly, but you have Wild Dog as one of your settings, treble, bass, and split sound. And there is, for those who are interested, a handy diagram. So split sound is in position switch A, clunk, in position A, what are we looking at? We're on split sound. Position A, split sound is neck and bridge. In position B, it's all three on. And bass setting is, oh, okay, that's neck and bridge. Yeah, so bass is neck in position A, and in position B it's neck and middle. Treble is bridge only. In position B it's middle. Wild Dog is in position A is bridge with some extra bite and a boost, and in B it's bridge and middle. So that's all of them pretty much explained, and then we've got a master volume here and a master tone. So kind of what we've got eight selections between these two knobs here, and then some tonal changes there. So I've had a play of this at the weekend when we had a little jam together, and I actually quite enjoyed it. It's a heavy thing, but it is one of these, and apparently somebody was raving about these. A review on YouTube was raving about these Burns London knurled engraved tuners, because I guess they've got a bit of grip to them, but they're just tuners. But hey, they're different. And we've got the Burns series and the serial number, and we've got an interesting bridge which is not usual. Now I saw some of these were listed or advertised or reviewed with Wilkinson bridges, but this thing doesn't have one. It has a Burns bridge, which I better show you up close. Sorry about that. It has a Burns bridge. Look, see, and that's kind of okay. Looks familiar, except it doesn't have the normal anchor point, so I don't really know where that anchors. But it anchors under there. Interestingly, the tremolo arm that came with it did not fit, dropped straight in, whereas this one that I found from my spares, thankfully, get it the right way around, thankfully does fit. So Dave can have this one to solve that problem. And I've also put a black tip on the end of it, so you can see. The other thing, when I was at home, I tell you what, I wonder, should we have a sort of listen? Let's have a listen first, shall we? Because it is an unusual sonically designed thing, so I think we ought to have a look first rather than last, because by the time I get to finish with it, I'm probably more ready to go home than anything else. Let's bring the mucky old amp out. It's only dusty, but it is dusty. Now, of course, I never ever do any sensible investigation of the sounds on this amp, so I've kind of left it where it fell after playing somewhere sometime. So I've no idea, nothing's balanced, so, and it's all full of swirl and noise. But so we've got this jack comes out the front, which is a slightly unusual thing for me. So what have we got? Wild Dog's nearest me. Wild Dog on A. Give me Wild Dog on A. Bit rattly on the volume. Woo! Bit rattly, these need some squirtings. I see it's an odd tone because it doesn't really, it's like a boost control. It's supposed to be tone, volume. Okay, so Wild Dog. It's, you notice what's happening? It's actually neck heavy. Can you believe it? Okay, so let's go to from Wild Dog A, Wild Dog B. Okay, that's bridge and middle. So on Wild Dog, that tone thing seems not to be a tone, it seems to be a boost. Quite a lot of boost. You could argue that was tone, but it's more like boost. So let's go on to treble. That's a weird tone circuit. It's like a treble booster. So, okay, so treble is bridge, middle. What are we doing? Oh yeah, we're going to bass. Bass on A. No, bass on A. No, we're back to Wild Dog. How did that happen? Bass. Okay, we can hear the bass kick in. Yes. Whenever I turn the fire off, the heater off in this workshop, I get a sort of a weird burning smell. There's the reverb. Wow, that's interesting. So that the tone knob is like a tone knob on the bass setting. Closed, bassy, trebly. And now onto split sound, which is in the case of A, it's neck and bridge. B, it's all three. Okay. Bring back the wild dog. With boost. Wild dog on A. Bridge only. Whew, that's got quite some punch, that bass section. Well, I am impressed by the sound combos. It's really curious and interesting, and there's more going on there than meets the eye. So, Dave, I think you've got a decent little thing here. Feels a bit top heavy on that strap, but we'll have to allow it to be that way. Now it's worn, it's been played, it's been lived with, it's got crackles. The string broke as soon as I did a bend, as is always my way. I can't seem to bend high E's without them breaking on me. And we do have some problem in the back here, and I'll show you what that is. It's something I discovered a bit earlier on when I came to undo the thing. It's the completely mashed up tremolo screws, claw screws. So I've dug some spare ones out because we're going to need them. Also, something weird happened with this. It started out when I picked it up from, or Dave dropped it to me. It started out with the tremolo bridge in a sort of fully floating position, and then I lowered the action, and it kind of disappeared down to, it flattened out a bit by the time I'd finished lowering the action. So it's weird because it didn't really take change much in the way of the force, and it kind of set itself as nearly a hardtail. So we're going to set it for down only anyway. So, but you can see look at the state of that. That's absolutely smashed, baby. So we're going to have to remove the other ones, the springs, and take these two out. No, I'm not going to do that because I've got bloody strings on, am I? Not without locking it down. Let's take the strings off. See, what I want to do is I want this down on the ground to do the setup, or to do whatever needs doing on the setup. And I don't really want to take these strings off because they're so old. But I can't tighten this up any further, given the state of those. I'm so sorry. I really can't do them up any further, given the shocking state of these things here. Oh, I can a little bit, but they are grunged. Let's see if I can destroy them a bit more. Anyway, what I'll do is once we've done the setup part, I will replace them. So I'm putting some more load on this. What's left of this one, and hopefully for the setup we've got on here and the tuning we've got, this will stay locked down, which I'm pretty certain it will. So let's just retune it first. Hold on. That bee is singing up at this end. Yeah, sitaring a bit. So I need to attend to the nut slots. Yes, the nut slots, those things. So let's check the action while I'm at it. See what we've got. So we'll need, we'll need some of these things. So we've got it hard-tailed. It's now able to put it to what action we want. We're going to treat it as hard-tailed from now on. Even when we set the tremolo, it'll be from there downwards. Okay, tiny bit more. Yes, so this is the review on this that I saw today was quite interesting. The chap who reviewed it played an early Shadows song, which was appropriate because the Shadows used to use these in the days before they were Fender Stratocaster people. So that's the right thing to do. That's too high. Now I have noticed some thrumming going on in here. There is something vibrating and making things thrum along. Thrum along. Right, now we're going to go down a bit. Not far off, actually. And good. So let's again tune this, and then we'll check the relief and the action at the other end. Hear that? Okay, so correct action at that end. Let's look at the relief. Very flat. It's not too bad. I mean, we can start with it there. It's got some relief, but it's still pretty flat. Now let's look at the first fret action down here. I've ordered some more of these. I'll take these home and bring the new ones in because I'm losing track of, I can't see the numbers on here. So, okay, so these are too low, really, certainly on the D and the A and the G, really. The others are just about okay. So this does need a new nut. It's kind of hoping to get away with that, but it needs what it needs, and it's clear that this has been not brilliantly cut anyway because of the way it's sitaring. out you come. Okay, well I have a nut that will do the job. It's originally I'd got it for a tailor, but it happens to be the same string spacing, and I've got a spare blank, but I don't want to use that, so I will use this one, and at least I'll be able to get another one. It's a 6143. As it happens, it's also wide enough. It's different shape top to this one, but it will do the job. Same spacing. So let us get on and change that now while we can. Can't be here too late today. So off with these again. Let's hope it strings last long enough to do the job. I've got a terrible track record of E strings breaking on me. Okay, this appears to should be able to come off easily. So there we are. I thank you. And here's your replacement. Now I'm just going to do my usual quick drawing to check what I'm doing with the height of the nut. And so I need my thingies. I think I bought another set of these as well because I need some at home. Well, the electronic ones? No, the digital ones. They're a bit untrustworthy, frankly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this nut from base to the notch of the high E, and draw it on here as I like to do. Base of the high E, notch is that's just 7 on the dot. Seven, and on the bottom side here. Now we know these are actually a bit low, so this is also, this is 690. 690. We know that's a little bit low, so I think we're going to need to go to 710 and 7 minimum in our target for this one. So if I measure this one, and we go 800, and we go this one 780, so we've got minus 80 minus 0.8 on this 0.8 on this base side, and we've got minus 0.9 on the treble side, so it's very close. So it's almost a millimetre. Yeah, almost a millimetre. Now, really, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be trying to mark up any marks on this nut to follow it visually. That's people say, oh, graphite nut on there. No, it's not. It's a plastic piece of garbage. So this guitar, a couple of guitars I've had through in the last couple of days have been basically, how should we say it? They've been sold by their owners. We've got a bit more off the treble end than the bass end on this, so I'm going to put a little bit of extra push on that side. Yeah, so a couple of guitars that have been sold to my customers as either immaculate, or in the case of this one, extremely good, very good playing condition, very good used condition. This one's nearer. It is pretty good, except there's a couple of things, like you saw the tremolo claw screws are connect. So we're down to 710, so it's 736 already, and we're down at 758 already, and we're going down to 7. Yeah, so this one also, so it has some issues that need taken care of, and one of them was also this. It's a small thing, but the badge thrums when you play, so it needs to be somehow stuck down, or perhaps the little pins taken out and something put under it to keep it down. But anyway, it just, that's a tiny little thing. But otherwise, the burns is much closer to the thing than is the nearly there now. Than is the other one, which was the lag, and the lag acoustic, sadly, was kind of sold as, you know, very, very immaculate condition, I think, and it bugged me muchly because it isn't, and I think the seller responded, you know, and maybe the seller who watches my video sees this, and you know, I say this in spirit of friendship and respect, because you know, I think it's something that lots of people have to learn in time. So I think the sellers, I'm not mentioning any names, you notice this, right? But the seller, I think the seller's view was, oh, okay, so the bridge is lifting a bit. Well, that's an easy fix. And well, first of all, no, it isn't. It's a good 2 or 3 hours of work. You can't just squirt glue under it and clamp it down. You have to break it off completely, and you have to clean up both sides of the deal, and then you have to put it back together. Oh shit, I've done that twice in a row now. Never mind. Anyway, it's not simple. It's a complicated, or it's a difficult operation to do, and it takes time and it takes experience to do it well. Otherwise, you'll end up with a mess. Anyway, so first of all, it's not easy, or not simple, and then if it were just that thing on its own, you might say, well, perhaps, you know, well, no, let's be just frank. That's a 200 quid plus. I wouldn't do it for less, and certainly not with a setup, you know, on top of it. So it's straight away that quote unquote easy fix is twice what the guitar cost, and it is, for reasons I'm going to explain now, it's already into unviableness. And the reason for that is that the guitar also is adjusted to its maximum. Now the previous owner had adjusted it and got to a very nice playing action with their adjustment, but that's not the issue. The issue is that it's a nice playing action, but there is no more available, and so that down the line, when, not if, but when the guitar changes shape some more, you won't have any possible adjustment remaining. Now, it is at a nice action at the moment. You could play it all day for fun at the moment, but there is no break angle for the high E at all over the saddle. So the playing action is kind of a bit of an illusion. So it's the kind of thing where you'd say, this B is looking, and the B and the A look like they're needing string trees to hold them down. What's interesting as well is that all the strings are pulling the nut this way, which is a weird thing to have. So there's non-alignment of the strings through the neck into this headstock end, so it's all pulling that way a little bit. Just a design thing, but it's curious to observe. It means I have to stick this on early if I want it to stay in position, and that's not common. Don't usually find myself having to do that. Anyway, so I'm looking at this about height, and if I look at the height over here, do I take a bit more off via the thingy? Let's see what the measurement is on the G. I can sort of make a guesstimate what I've got to work with. If it's about 0.5, which it is, 5.556, so that's 0.2 still to come off. We could take a bit more off. I don't know how long these strings are going to survive, these sacrificial strings. Anyway, yeah, so the thing about the guitar is that, you know, right in this snapshot of a second, it does play well, inverted commas. There's almost no there's no break angle for the high E, so it barely sounds, and you couldn't use it with a what did I say, 563.2. We want to take down 0.2. You couldn't use a piezo under saddle thing, which is something that my customer wanted to do. Okay, we're 710, we're 703, so we want to go to 690. So while on one level it's not that expensive, 110 quid or 115 quid or something like that. Another level, you know, if it was a worthwhile overall proposition, you might, if it was an old Martin, you might definitely want to take the bridge off and reaffix it. But as it is, it isn't. It's a lag that is also worn out in terms of further adjustments for the future, and it's worn out in the sense because the body has deformed over time, and all guitar bodies do. So I was trying to make the point in a couple of posts early on. I think I'll stick this down, that feels good. Make the point in some posts that sometimes sellers and buyers, actually, we're all guilty of the same things until we know otherwise. So buyers and sellers, for different reasons, obviously. Seller wants to sell, buyer wants a nice new guitar that looks great on the whatever the marketplace page. But so that both buyer and seller tends, or is guilty of, if you like, and tends to look at things in individual sort of cases. So they look at the damn it, these damned strings. They look at the, let's say the you know, the bridge issue, and sort of look at it in isolation. And so the seller does that too, because they might say, well, it's not that difficult. Yeah, look, there's a problem with the bridge, but it's only a little tiny bit, and it's never moved in the time I've had it, and it probably won't move again, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of understandable when you're looking at that one aspect of it. But you have to, both buyer and seller need to get more practiced in looking at the whole thing in its completeness. And when you add in the other things I've mentioned, the guitar isn't worth investing money in. But what it is worth, bizarrely, and this comes around full circle, it's worth 115 quid all day long to take and thrash the hell out of, you know, on your camper van, in your camper van, or this is just, this is not going to go. This has to be really heavily glued down. This is terrible. Burns. Right, this has put me in a spot now. I have to glue this down in a way that I really don't like doing it, i.e. with a lot of glue. Now, after all these years doing this, you'll be astonished to see me turn up with some string. How do they do it? This way they do it. Some string pushers things, spacers. Never used it before. You can probably tell by the clumsy way I'm going about it. That's because that one shouldn't be on that one, should it, Sam? Dope. Anyway. Yeah, so I really do think it's a shame because, like I said, the guitar if the seller had known a bit more about the limitations, or I'm not saying they did and didn't say, but had they known more about its limitations and spoken about them and been more, you know, and had the customer bought them in full knowledge of the existence of those issues, then actually, you know, if you'd gone and played that guitar, you could look at it and you could say to yourself, well, God, it feels really nice, because that's what the previous owner managed to do. Managed to, you know, at the cost of getting it right down low and having practically no break angle, but for the time being, he's got it down low, and you could really enjoy playing that. No, you couldn't fit under saddle because the high E absolutely wouldn't drive the under saddle piezo to make any noise. That would be a problem. But you definitely could. You definitely could play it and have fun. And had the customer gone and seen it, played it, and weighed up 115 quid, that would have been a good guitar to have, because you would have felt the guitar, you would have really liked it, and you would have thought, what's 115 quid in this day and age, folks? My goodness, you'd say, I could see myself playing this for a couple of summers on the go for 115 quid. You really couldn't get a cheap, you know, horrible Toeman cheapie for that. Harley Benton, I mean, I know they're quite good, but you know, you could tell yourself that there were all manner of good reasons why this would be a good choice. And like I say, so the only thing that's wrong, but there's two things that are wrong. The first thing that's wrong is that the seller didn't say there were these problems, and you know, a not very experienced buyer, you know, who isn't doing it all day in day out like I would be, you know, looking at guitars, they didn't know to kind of look out for these problems. I'm going to just try and hold. Oh, am I? How do you get these stupid things off now once you put them on? Yeah, you know, I wouldn't buy them, that guitar in that condition. So, I suppose what I'm saying is we need to be. The world's a better place if we went overboard to a greater length to state all that's wrong with it. And of course, there is the part that says, well, what if the seller isn't really technical and doesn't know guitars that well? Then, you know, save yourself by you, the buyer, making sure you understand pitfalls, or you know what the typical problems are in terms of acoustic guitars, and that, you know, as part of my sort of rant, I just felt like I really want to get across to people, and I do every time somebody comes around and brings an acoustic or talks about acoustic guitars. I absolutely go off on one about, you know, please do not go and buy acoustic guitars without either seeing them or without knowing, you know, asking for the photographs that will give you an absolutely clear look. Oh, this is annoying me. Do you know what? This is standing up a bit. It's sitting up on a lip. Oh, how annoying. I'm just keep making a mess for myself to tidy up. Damn. There's it's sitting on a little edge of paint there, which is now just becoming stupidness. Let's rub some of this off. Anyway, so you know, there's nothing worse than feeling like you not got ripped off, but the thing you wanted turned out to be not as, you know, you feel that it was not as described, and it creates bad feeling, and God knows there's too much of that around. And so I suppose I guess what I'm saying is this. I should probably make a separate video or something, but I don't like to get all preachy about it much. But I can't say enough times. I think it's like I have to go back to the beginning and say something as a kind of precursor. And the precursor is, you know, and I know you may not be looking for an acoustic guitar right now, so you've come here to maybe look at a Bison, Burns Bison. But anyway, let's just say sometime in your life you might look for an acoustic guitar or might be wanting to buy one. My advice from my experience is, or the information I want to impart to you is this, and that is all acoustic guitars, almost all, are likely to deform. Sometimes, and it was for me hard to believe that, you know, when we're not guitar makers and we're just the people that lust after them and buy them and play them, it's sort of natural for us to sort of think that these things are, you know, beautifully made, and maybe we got really unlucky and the one we got just happened to be you know, not so good, or very often we're led to believe it's because we didn't put it in the right kind of cupboard to humidify it and so on and so forth. But actually what I'm finding in the 9 or so years of doing this, and it's kind of saddened me, I found that all acoustic guitars exist in a permanent battle between a contest between tone and strength, structural strength and tone. And you know this is true because you know the old guitars, the heavy, dull ones, you know, seem to last forever. The ones we call tanks, like the old Echoes and stuff, and the pretty, tonally pretty ones, you know, are not, you know, are flimsier, more susceptible, more vulnerable. So, but there is this permanent battle between tone and strength, and I'm afraid to say that strength loses. In other words, the tone is the thing that the customer and the manufacturer prioritizes, and consequently the guitars that come out of factories really respond to the player's demand for tone, and as such they then compromise the overall structural strength, unfortunately. Is this thing actually going to sit on, or are we still on the edge of something? I think I probably better take a bit more. So what this means is, and I have to caveat this as I usually do by saying that because I'm a guitar tech, obviously I'm going to see more of the guitars that have given up the struggle than I will see the ones that are strong and kind of outlasting, or, you know, living a long and charmed life. I don't like the way this thing gets in the way of seeing anything. Yeah, so I will say that I will always, obviously, I'm seeing as a doctor, I'm seeing ill patients, not healthy ones. But having said that, I have seen things you people wouldn't believe. I've seen brand new, almost brand new guitars coming in with virtually no adjustment left in them, and they're practically, or you can get one good setup out of them to a decent playing action that the customer's happy with, and that basically, in many cases, for example, that's the end of your adjustment. And when it changes again in the future, as it will, you got no room for adjustment. Damn this thing! It just, wow, this is incredible the way this goes off sideways. I'm astonished by it, really am. It's hard to believe. Anyway, yeah, so the most guitars then end up, oh, these are in the wrong place, that's why. Yeah, they end up deforming over time. And some people hold the opinion that it's all down to, it's because of humidity. And I know the humidity has some effect on guitars, but I think the real problem is the force, the constant 24 hours a day string loading, which eventually causes the body to deform. Now I'm looking at this thing and it's still, I'm sure it's still not sitting in this slot. I don't really want to overdo it because I don't want a gap, but I think we're going to need to do some more thinning. Anyway, yeah, so a constant battle between strength and tone. Many new guitars. I just constantly have people saying, "I've got this new Taylor, I've got this new, Takamine, and it's terrible. The action's X or Y, and can you do something with it?" And thankfully, if it's a Taylor, because of the bolt-on neck and shim system, I can do something with it. I can set up a nice initial playing action, and hopefully, if it's a new guitar, there will be some room for later adjustments, or a later adjustment. But I've made adjustments on pretty new Taylors when, but I say pretty new, but not under warranty, because the second owner has been bought after somebody's had it for a year or something. It's still relatively young, and because it's second owner, they don't benefit from being able to claim any warranty. So, and being able to barely be able to get any improvement at all for them. So the question is, what does that mean? If that's true, that everything, all acoustic guitars are basically losing that battle, fighting and losing that battle, then really what I'm saying is, the rules I would suggest would be, first and foremost, don't ever go and don't buy a guitar mail order. If you buy one new, be absolutely certain that you buy it from a reputable dealer, that if there's anything amiss about the action that it comes with, and there's no scope for adjusting it, then you must be confident to send it back. And I would say, if you're spending in the sort of £500, £600, £700 region on a guitar, if you don't have the assertiveness skills to call the company and say, "This is coming back, you are having this back right now, there's no further conversation, it's brand new, it's unacceptable, it's not fit for purpose, and you're taking it back." If you don't have the assertiveness to do that, then don't buy it, please. You must not buy it, because you've got to be able to assert for your rights. God, I hate this blasted strings in the way business. But I need the strings on there to get this in place so I can tighten it up and keep it locked down. Yeah, so that's an aspect of it that some people don't think about, because it's not our daily sort of thing that we think about. Is actually, how do I deal with issues when something isn't the way I think it should be? And a lot of people are pretty poor at demanding their rights. So if you're spending in the sort of £1,200 or £800 region on a guitar, be honest with yourself. If you don't have the assertiveness or the confidence to absolutely stand your ground for your consumer rights, then genuinely you're in you're at risk of being not scammed but fobbed off. And some companies like Taylor, if you buy a Taylor, you'll get something like I think it's a 10 or 12 year warranty in the UK. And if you're, if you keep the guitar and you are the initial owner, you've got a lot of time to get that sorted out if it isn't the way you want it. And they make their guitars so that you can adjust them, or a tech can adjust them. And there will be a standard setting that they make it to, and that's kind of pretty straightforward that they would do that. And when it comes out of the factory and into the shop, it will be at that setting. And fair enough, if you want a deviation from that, it's hard for them to know what you want. But what they should do is certainly, if I was running a guitar shop and you came in and you said you wanted this kind of playing action or that, I would get my stocks of Taylor shims, or if I'd be in direct contact with Taylor, I'd get my shims and I'd do it for you before you bought it. And that way you'd have a great experience and you'd tell other people about it. Ouch. So I think it makes sense to do it. But even if even if there's an argument why the dealer can't do that, well, then you certainly then you could argue, all right, it's fair enough to be ready to pay another 135 quid or something to have it done properly to your taste, and have the action set the way you like it. And then you get a great guitar, and you can then come back to me, whoever can do it in years to come, and have the next adjustment made. And also, if you're the owner and you reach a place where I can't adjust it anymore because, let's say, what I argue is true, and that is that the guitar is permanently, even the good quality ones are permanently in a state of folding up change, then if you're the initial owner, certainly within those 10 or 12 years, you could be saying, okay, it's run out of adjustability with the shims, could you please take it back to the factory and reset the neck geometry? And the representative, the Taylor lady in Netherlands, told me that's what they'll do. So there's a really good reason, but you have to be confident and assertive and clear about what your rights are, what they've promised you, and you have to know a bit about where the guitar's at to be able to say, I know I've had my tech shim it over the period of 5 years now, and he says we're out of adjustment for the kind of action I want. So, realistically, I would contact the Taylor and organise it. But it's just that thing. If you didn't know that that's how it worked, you wouldn't know. And Taylor don't honestly do a very good job of letting their customers know. And I think they're missing a trick, because I think it's one of the great positives of their design. And nor does the retailer. You'd be absolutely surprised how many Taylor owners send me their guitars and have no idea that the neck is bolt-on, for example. Now, if the fact that it's a bolt-on, if that isn't one of the most important things about this, about Taylor, for example, I don't know what is. So it's crazy to have missed out, making a big deal out of it. A song and dance you should make, because it's such a good thing. it's also, you're missing out on, how would you know then that it's, time to either get it reset, or that's a possibility. So I just think that Taylor and the retailers together don't seem to anticipate that you, the customer, often don't know these things, and you certainly know less about them than they do. And actually, what's worrying is that many of the retailers don't know about it. In fact, I've had retailers tell me they didn't know that the Taylor was a bolt-on. In fact, yeah, that's right. I had a guy who sold them for many years. He said, in the post 1999 when they changed the neck system. But he said in a comment, he said, I sold them for 10 years or something, and I had no idea they were bolt-on necks. And kind of, yeah, why would you, unless somebody had taken the time to explain it. This is this is quite good. There's a low spot here, and there's a low spot at the end here, but it's bending and doing everything it should at this low action, this new low action, without choking. So I'm pleased. We've got a bit of fret slap down there that we can aim to clear up as we go. But anyway, yeah. So that was my thing. It is, rule number one. The more you know about how acoustic guitars work, the better armed you are to decide how you're going to go about sourcing one that suits you, and also having a clear idea of the things to avoid and look out for. And there's nothing more depressing than people going out and spending a good chunk of money buying a really sexy brand name guitar second hand, because, well, it's a such and such, an Ovation, 70s Ovation. They keep their value, don't they? And then somebody buys it and brings it back, and it's unplayable. And to make it playable would require a complete neck reset, amongst other things. Very good. Yeah, so rule number one, or advice number one, learn about how acoustic guitars are put together. Be realistic, as I've had to become over these last 10 years or so, and that is to face up to the fact that while I wanted to believe that acoustic guitars were somehow, the good ones were, surely the good ones were, capable of resisting and not folding up. Well, the truth is, no, not even the good ones. They fold up too. And of course, if I doubted myself when I first started to see that, then you as a player, you're much more likely to doubt it, because you, inverted commas, just a player. What do you? They know more about it. It's them that should know how it all works, and they should be able to design things that don't fold up. And then they're part of my logic was, well, even if it does fold up, surely they can't sell that stuff, being as flawed as it is. And guess what? Of course they can. As long as people keep on buying it from them, they'll keep on selling it. Yeah, so be very, very cynical about this strength tone battle, and assume that most acoustic guitars will fold up. And then your question is, what do I do when they fold up? The first thing that's a fact is that most acoustic guitars are designed so that the only way you can change the action as it increases, first of all, they don't tell you the action is going to increase over the time, but then when it does, the only option you've got on the majority of acoustic guitars, the only option you've got to remedy that high playing action, there's two, but the only realistic one is to reduce the saddle until you can't reduce it anymore. And the downside of that, as Taylor has quite rightly aware, and hence their design. But the downside of that is that as you lower the saddle, you decrease the break angle of the string over the saddle, and in doing that, you decrease the amount of vibrations transmitted to the acoustic guitar top or the piezo pickup if you've got one fitted. So there's nothing good about reducing the break angle of the strings by having to reduce down the saddle to get to the playing action you want. The only, and Taylor again knows this, the only real solution to adjust your action without compromising your break angle is by doing a neck reset, because if the playability is decreasing or the action is rising, what's really happening is that the geometry is changing, and your fingerboard extension, or your fingerboard, is no longer pointing at the bridge in the same angle, and so the strings arrive, or the strings come in at the same angle, but the fingerboard effectively is lower, and the playability appears higher to your hands. And the only way you're going to get around that is to take the neck off, change the angle of the faces where the neck joins the body, and glue it back together if that's the way it's constructed. But that's a major, expensive, time-consuming game. You don't want to be doing that. Now I'm going to put, first of all, before I struggle with this, I'm going to put a little bit of relief in this. Bison says it's got a two-way bidirectional truss rod, which is quite cool, but let's see if it goes the normal human way. Well, that doesn't go in at all. I can't remember what it said about its the hex key size. That's too long. Yeah, so you have to, you don't want to be at the level of a neck reset. People will pay for that if they've got a worn out Martin that's played for 50, 60 years. And has the residual value to mean that, well, you know, if I want to ever sell this in the future, I've got to recalibrate now. I've got to get this neck reset, or it's no longer playable, and B, it no longer has any of the other value that it once had. So you have to, it's like a servicing requirement. You have to do that in order to, you have to get the neck reset in order to keep it, to retain any value in it if you want to ever resell it. But there are a few mid-price, well, no mid-price guitars that really fall into that value category. And a neck reset should be, if the person's putting the right amount of skill and effort into it, a traditional neck reset should be in the region of five or 600 quid if somebody's doing it right. It's a complex thing. So it all comes down to, economic value, economic viability, basically. So my advice is to know and understand what's really going on. Be cynical and suspicious, and suspect that every guitar that you look at, new but particularly second-hand, will be in some stage of losing that battle, and some astonishingly more quickly than others. And do not take the retailer or the seller's word that, oh, it's just a bit over humid, put it in a humidity cupboard or a dehumidifier for a week and it'll be fine. You may get some improvement out of doing that, but it will be sort of secondary to what's wrong with it. So I just think you need to go out, if you're going out to look at a guitar, whether it's second hand or new, go out, get your hands on it, feel it, look for the telltale signs. The telltale signs are, you know, what is the action at the last fret. If you're used to calculating it at the 12th fret, then look at the action at the 12th fret, and you know, my target action at the 12th, at the last fret is something like, I like it at about on an acoustic, about 2.25 millimeters. God, this is not going to come out. Yes, it is. You'll immediately be able to take your little measuring thing, and if it's 6 millimeters or 4 or whatever, it's clearly way too high, and it's just going to be a nightmare. You're not going to get it. You're never going to get it to play the way you want, and it'll be at that playing action for a reason, and the reason will always be not because somebody likes it there. It's always going to be because it's run out of adjustment room, and the guitar has started to deform the way I've been speaking about. So, you know, if it's at 3 millimeters at what I call the last fret, if you find the actions at 3 mil at the last fret, that is not too bad, providing there is some scope for improvement. If it's already out of scope, there's no more room for improvement. You couldn't lower the saddle anymore if you tried without losing the brake angle. Then you walk away, because it's never going to get better, short of expensive neck reset, which you're not going to want to do before you play it. So there you go. Just that's a couple of the things. If you look at the back of the bridge, well, look at the back of the guitar, and you see straight away on an acoustic guitar, if when you put a flat edge like a ruler just behind the bridge, you will see how bellied it is, how much of a hump the back has. Somebody will try, and people will always try to, oh, it's supposed to have some. If there's 7 mils on each side when it's balanced in the middle, or even 5 mils, it's too much. It's bellying because, guess why? The strings are pulling the whole of the top and the bridge that way. Get a piece of paper. Can you see any gap? Is the bottom of the bridge shaped like an arch over this bent top? If it is, you probably want to walk away, because unlike the seller of the lag we were talking about, it isn't an easy job to just stick it back on. Some people try it, they just squirt some glue under it and clamp, but by the time it's come off that much, it's already deformed quite a bit. Okay, so I've got my hand caught in the horn, the bull's horn. Just for those interested, that's the tech going on in there. It's like a little sunken, lowered down, a bit of a Floyd Rosey type kind of deal. So it's doing the same thing. It's just a double decker, so the pivot points are below this rather than pivoting on the edge of this, which is quite cool. So there they are. Ooh, there they are under there. Nicely done. They're a bit ravaged. Good heavens. Yeah, this one. Hold on. So this is the other thing about well used and looked after. That edge there is a bit chewed, but you know what? It's old. It's not young. You see that? Bit of hard to keep it in focus. I'm sorry. Yeah, so it has some damage on there, but it seems to be working okay. So we'll just put that to one side for a minute. What I wanted to do, while we had the back off here, was to replace these screws, because they're knackered. Well, this one is, and it's just going to keep on getting mashed up. Nobody's fault that it gets mashed up, other than the design of the guitar. So I think Fender's tremolo claw almost always put you in conflict with the claws on the front at the angle that it was designed to go in. So you basically can't get a screwdriver in there strong enough to do the job whilst This is the longer ones, that's okay. Yeah, you can't get a screwdriver in without it grinding at an angle. You can only really use it at an angle because of the way these claws stick up and get in the way. I don't know if they were meant, I don't know if these little ups and downs, they're needed there to hold the strings, but I don't know if somebody thought a thinner screwdriver would get through there. Perhaps they had thinner screwdrivers in the Fender factory and it was all right. But in today's age, these chunkier screwdrivers, they really don't want to allow you to see this one just now doesn't even want to let the claw come forward. Let's get the claw forward. Right, now do it. So yeah, you're always fighting over the top of these teeth. The only way to avoid that is to have the screws going in steeper. But if they go in steeper, they come through the body somewhere, and you don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to get a slightly different screwdriver which has better grippiness to avoid at all possible any slippage and squishage of the screw attachment and the end there. I'll go quite a way in, obviously, a bit more than they went in before because they were shorter, but this is okay. I want to go in to the point where it's hopefully going to still remain locked down, and then we put this back on. Now, I'm not going to go totally overboard with this. It's got a lot of scuffing on the scratch plate and stuff like that, and I think it's not going to look showroom new. It's a used guitar that's lived a good few years already. Now, obviously it's not 1960s, but it has certainly been enjoyed by somebody for quite some time. So I'm not going to attempt to make it look pristine again. Damn. It's impossible to get these in and turn them round. There should be some sort of screwdriver that lifts these up in a given angle, which isn't this. Oh, can you see that? Help me! Where did I go? If you had 3 hands, it would work. I mean, technically I could pull the screw further out and not have to pull so hard, but I guess that would probably make it easier. I'm going to go all again. Yeah, so acoustic guitars, they're all trying to deform, even the good ones. They're still under the same pressure, and it's 24/7. And when the action rises, it's because the geometry of the guitar is folding up, and that's it is sometimes added to by there being humidity, an excess of humidity, but it's not the most common cause. This thing is, why do they make them with this thing turning in one direction when you need it to turn the other way to get it in? Why couldn't it be at 90 degrees? This claw bit, I mean this, yeah, not the claw, this bit here, like so. Thank you. Anyway, so this has got 5 springs. You don't really need 5 springs. I'm still have this thing that goes on in my brain that gets me confused, and people go, "Ah, yes, well, I like it to be stiffer, so I add more." And the people who say that, they tend to mean when they have a floating tremolo, they like it to, they want to sort of, they've got it floating and they want it to feel stiffer. And if you think about it, well, as as I have many a time. Changing the subject and going off and on and on. But all that these springs do is, depending on how strong, how chunky the springs are to begin with, and then in second aspect is how hard the tremolo claw is pulling on them, in other words how far you've wound it in. Those two things together add up to the question of how much strain is pulling in that direction. And you have a fixed amount of force pulling in the other direction, and that obviously is the gauge of strings that you're using and how whatever pitch they're wound up to, tightened up to. So that's the load coming from one side, and the idea about a balanced tremolo is between the choice of springs you have and the amount of force you're putting, tightness you're using on those springs by adjusting the trem claw screw. Those two things, the type of springs and the screw, equals the amount of force you're countering the string pull with. And obviously, if you think about it, it's got to be common sense that when those two forces are equal is when your tremolo will sit in a pivoted, or it'll hold in a balance on its pivot point, right? And it pivots, or it pivots at equilibrium precisely because the two forces, the string forces versus the spring forces, or the spring and claw screw, but let's call it the load on the springs, and consequently the force the springs exert around that pivot point, are equal. And that's what equilibrium means, that they are balanced equally. Now, if you think about it, moving it, let's say it is at equilibrium, moving it backwards and forwards from equilibrium is never going to be any harder or softer. Well, is it? That's the question I can't get my head around. Some people are sure that because you can set that equilibrium up with usually two springs on a standard 9 or 10 gauge stringed 648mm scale guitar. You can put it into equilibrium quite easily with only two springs, and I think I've tried it with one before, and if you can pull that tight enough you can do it with one. So the question is if it's at equilibrium with 5 springs, is that inherently any harder to gently move the tremolo forward away from equilibrium, which is balanced, so the forces are cancelled out? So why should it be harder if you're moving away from equilibrium? Why should it be harder if equilibrium was achieved with 1 spring or 5? Is that a good way of putting it? And I know that there'll be probably people who argue either direction, but if we set it up in equilibrium with just 1 spring, with the claw right in and the spring under high tension, loading the load being equal to the pull of the strings, then we move it away from equilibrium, and so what's happening? You're tilting it away, tipping it away from equilibrium, and the person who's arguing that five springs will make it tighter, harder to move, they'll say that's because they're 5 springs, it'll be stiffer to move this way. But will it be stiffer to move that way? What are we doing? We're pulling against the springs away from equilibrium. I can't see how it's going to be physically harder, no matter how many springs. If you're at equilibrium, the movement away on either side is going to be, there's going to be a finite pull. The strings have a finite pull, and for it to be in equilibrium, the springs have a finite pull. So it can't get any more pull. They're either cancelling each other out in equilibrium, or they're moving either side of that, and consequently you're ending up with the total amount of pull. And if you got it to equilibrium with 5 springs, what we know is that those springs were not loaded very heavily, whereas if you had 1, you loaded it very heavily on the tremolo claw spring, but it's the same force. So what happens then? So if you did it with 5 and that each spring wasn't putting much force into it, and then you came down and you're pulling on 5 springs, they're not putting much force on, so each one doesn't have to bend much further for it to go down. So it's not like there was 5 under the same load as. Oh, help me! Somebody help me! I don't understand. Anyway, I've never believed in this. Oh, I'm going to put on 5 springs because when I operate it, and when I've sort of tried to test it, I've never really been able to feel a difference that's of any consequence. Which is weird. So that's my kind of confusion on this matter. Right, so what have we got to do now? Well, we have, let's see, are we still recording happily? Here we are, 1 hour 20. What we have to do now, with these now level, we've got to mask this off, polish it out, and then, I tell you what, before we do that, why don't we have to lift this off because we've got to get under there to put some squirty stuff on the volume and tone. So this could be a no-go without taking the neck off, I don't know, but let's see. Now, it's kind of further than we had planned to go, but there is no other way of getting some contact cleaner under there. So we get to have a little peek, but who knows what the wiring is going to be like under there. One of the reviewers of this guitar was pointing out that what was interesting about it was that the Burns guitars usually have kind of segmented pick guards, and this one clearly has just one single one, which I guess we'll find out now if it makes removal a lot easier. Woohoo! Yikes, it sure does. And there we have it. So I'll give you a quick gander under there. Wowee, nice styled stuff. Look, don't ask me what kind of switches these are exactly, but they are cute. Capacitor on this last one. Sorry, capacitor's up here on this first one, so it's on the Wild Dogs thing's got the capacitor on it. And there's a capacitor down here as well on the tone, and then there's volume mini pots for the volume. So pretty basic, not very pricey components, I have to say. And I think this is some there's some sticky stuff under there. I think somebody may well have had some shots of spray under there to try and do something before, but I think we shall be sure to do this away more safely, so we can hopefully soak up any spillage and then clear up this sticky goo. Ew. So complex sounding, but actually 2 of these cute big switches with lots of blobs of solder everywhere. 2 regular familiar switches and a fairly simple, cheap jack socket. Now that's nicely fitted, it's not going anywhere. Interestingly, that this one's just barely touching the what's it called? The shiny stuff. You know what I mean. Foil. And now I got a feeling either I've got some goo on this camera lens a minute, or it's the camera front is gooey and it's all looking terrible, but sorry about this. Maybe. Right, so what I want to do is fire a bit of stuff underneath or into the pot and see if I can find any of my contact cleaner things. that may have a nozzle, a thing on it, tubey thing. IPA solvent. Anyone got a little nozzle? Anyone found a nozzle? Any nozzles knocking about down here? Oh no, no. Oh, God. Damn. It's a pain. There's never one when you want one. There's always one around when you don't. Okay. I'll just have to be a bit more clumsy with it. Oh, here's one, but it's not the right stuff. But I can shoot it through to clean it out. Thank you. Bear with me. Oh, there we go. That'll do. Right, so first of all, a bit under there, and then a bit under here. Yeah, the people reach for this stuff and fire it in and then leave it. I think that's all there is to it. But in my experience, this doesn't really do anything. What really does the business is to do this once you've put any stuff on it, because the tracks on these, the metal tracks or the copper lined tracks or whatever, this sticky stuff, man. They need to, that's horrible. They need to be, what's the word? Scraped clean. Okay, so I'm just doing that for a bit. There is some sticky goo involved here. And in fact, there's quite a lot on the body here. It's yellowy and nasty. Could even be as grim as tobacco or something. Right, well, yuck. I should have put gloves on. Stupid me. Anyway, so that's as much as I can really do with that. So we can drop that back in and poke those wires where they most need to go, like so, and we'll do it up. Okay. Sorry about the noise. Yeah, so the world of acoustic guitars, just be cautious. Assume they're all folding up. And that's why, since I now personally have concluded they are all folding up, it's why I have now taken a big interest in Taylors, simply because I know I can probably keep them at the playing action I want for at least 10 years, and theoretically, if they wander away from adjustability beyond the realms or beyond the scope of shims, then I can call upon Taylor to reset the neck geometry under warranty. And that comes to the sort of final bit, which is whether you're buying it from someone like Taylor, who give good promises of service, and in my experience so far have been very good with service, or you're buying it from somebody on eBay and as my customer has done, and find as my customer has done that it hasn't gone perfectly well and there's some disagreement on the issue, then the thing that you've got to be able to do as a buyer is to assert your rights, and be assertive in the sense that somebody hasn't listed something, then the thing is not as described. End of story. And it's hard to, a lot of people don't like confrontation. That's understandable. But when something is not as described, the thing to remember is that things like eBay always kind of give the benefit of the doubt to the buyer, or mostly, and I think that's a good thing because, well, it's a good thing, but it can be abused. But it's a good thing in another way, because it means that if you raise a case and it's not as described, and you're careful and you take pictures and you are clear about why, then you usually get backed up by those vending places or those marketplace type things. But it's not always the case, so that, you know, if you're buying it on marketplace and you're going visiting someone locally, I think the hardest time to be assertive is face to face. And sometimes we go and pick up something, like it, and then come away and find a flaw, and then we have to face the prospect of going, well, it's easy to do it on eBay because you just press the raise a case button. Horrible thought to go back to that housing estate where you just bought the guitar off someone and say, I'm sorry, but you didn't tell me that it's split all the way down, because sometimes they'll just say, no, it wasn't like that when you took it out the door, and you really don't have a leg to stand on in those cases. So it's a hugely risky strategy. It's not risky, you can get some great bargains, but it's risky to do any high value buying. You know, if you're spending smallish sums of money that you can afford to get stung on once in a while, nobody likes it, but you know, you're buying in an unregulated sort of space, then that's okay. But do not, you know, if somebody says, I've got this 1967 Martin, you know, and I want 1,200 or 1,400 quid for it, and you go and look at it, you've got to know what you're doing. You really have to know your guitars, and you've got to be confident that you can spot something that's a fatal flaw or a forgery. You know, you go and buy this 1,400 quid Martin locally, you might go, well, the price means it's probably genuine, because you wouldn't try and palm off a Gibson that way at that price, would you? And then of course some people do, because there are enough people out there who don't know the signs. So more and more I'm looking for guitar brands that have adjustable necks, if they're made of wood, and that's why I was also interested to try the Emerald guitars, the carbon fiber ones, and I think they sent me an email the other day, because I offered them some, I gave them some heads up on some comments that somebody had left, and I tried to kind of, I don't know what the word would be, put one person in contact with the other so they could resolve the issue, rather than this person sort of shouting bad stuff online, which is all too easy to do. Anyway, I think as a thing of gratitude, they sent me a voucher or something to spend off one of their guitars. Unfortunately, I'm not in the market for one, much as I liked the one I saw. And then if money was less of an issue in the future or something, but I would be quite happy to have one, because the idea of a guitar that never folds up and will be genuinely, you know, with me for as long as I'm still ticking, is a nice thought, and it certainly would be years ago, instead of, you know, going through lots of acoustic guitars as they sort of curl up and die. Anyway, but yeah, I'm interested that what's the name? Martin has brought out they've done a couple of models in with adjustable bolt-on necks, and they designed what looks like a very cute little sort of, looks like a little SD card tray shim affair. So it's kind of, it's like Taylor, only even a bit more high tech, and it looks like a really good system. But when when we looked into it a bit more, it seems like they haven't followed through with making available the shims. So shims, the customer's access to the shim so they can set their preferred action from the get-go is critical. And it's, when we looked, it appeared that neither the service centres or customers could get hold of them. So you couldn't pay the service or get the service centres to do the thing for you, and you couldn't get hold of them to do it yourself, which is a complete shot in the foot, really. Having done all that work to create something that could look like it could be a really good rival for that functionality that Taylor has, they made it a no-go. So my customer, who was interested in it, bought it and sent it straight back, because the thought of, after a few phone calls around the country trying to get hold of the shims and being told, no mate, no, they've never seen them since they brought it out, never seen a shim, can't get hold of them. No, the service centres haven't got them, repair centres haven't got them, the authorised repair centres haven't got them. So what's the point? Anyway, maybe Martin will get round to fixing that problem, but not at that point, so they lost that sale. But I still would be looking out for any manufacturer that does go down that road and maybe improves on the Taylor stuff. I really think if you're working with wood, you're accepting that it's flawed and it's vulnerable and it will fold up, and that doesn't really surprise anyone. If we're just if the manufacturers were honest about it, sorry, noisy tape, the manufacturers were upfront about it and said, this is what happens, but what we've done to get around this is we've made it so that every couple of years you can do this or that, and it's really simple, and basically it means you'll have this guitar for your lifetime and pass it on to your children without needing to spend all that money on a reset. If they did that, I think it'd be a very big step forward, that's for sure. Anyway, so yeah, Martin sort of looked like they had a go and it was a bit of a false start. Maybe they'll have another go when they realise that. This is such a bad design. Tapping this on with a pin, it makes me think that the only way we're going to get this to stay put is to tap it a bit further, or put glue under it, or prise out these pins, which I don't really want to do. But well, we'll see if it really does end up causing a problem when it's being played. But I could hear it rattling to begin with, but that maybe it was just me. Right, you'll have seen a million of these re-polishing things, and it's getting late, and I'm going to cut this video off here because there's going to be nothing unusual from this point onwards that you haven't seen before. But I just wanted really to show you around this beastie for a little bit. So I'm just going to do the usual now, which is boringly polish out the frets and shine them up, give it an overall clean up the headstock a bit, restring it with some new strings, and then we'll be ready for Dave to come and get it when he's ready. Okay, so thanks for watching. An unusual end point in this one, but yeah, and acoustic guitars, they are all folding up. Approach it with that point of view. I would honestly say to people, knowing what I know, that they are all folding up, I would say don't buy them privately unless you got the hands on one. Like I went to Ben's in Bristol a couple of years ago, and he had an Antoria from ages old Antoria, and it played like a dream, and it had not moved and changed its action in all those years by the looks of it. If you can go out and find one that plays absolutely perfect and there's no real risk tied up in the amount of money you're spending on it, buy it. But if you're going to spend money, my advice is don't buy second hand. No matter how tempted you are, no matter which mate offers you something down the pub, I mean a guitar, don't do it. if you're going to buy at above 300 quid or above an amount of money you can't afford to lose, buy from a reputable retailer and keep sending it back if it isn't good. Or even if, make sure you check the warranty. If it's got a 3-year warranty and 2 years from now you bring it to me and say, can you make it play a bit better? The action's really high. And I go, no, it's maxed out. You can't do any more with this. Even if it's 2 years into it, go straight back to the manufacturer and demand a replacement or a refund, because it's not repairable. It's not economically viable to repair, and it's not fit for purpose. You've got to not. We need not to accept from the vendors and the retailers, from the manufacturers and the retailers. We must not accept things that are not up to standard from the outset. But to know that, we have to be informed, and if we do spend money, go and spend more than you can afford to lose, then do it with a reputable retailer and be assertive, and do it only if you're confident it's second nature to you to get on the phone and say, nope, you're going to replace this because it is absolutely not repairable. You can try and repair it, but I'm not going to accept it until it's perfect as it should have been. And they'll quickly either refund you or replace it with one that is good. And if you have to, keep replacing it every 2 years and 11 months. That's their fault. If they can't work it out between them and the manufacturers to make a decent guitar that doesn't bend out of shape within a couple of years, tough. They'll pay for it. Anyway, I thought I needed a little bit of a rant on that. So thanks for listening and watching. Nice sound. It's got a clangy sound to it, this Burns, but I hope Dave enjoys it. It's got a ridiculously nice low action now, thanks to that. And I'll see you soon on another one. What's the next one coming through? Oh, well, you won't see these. I've got 3 Chinese Flying V things to upgrade. And what else have I got? Well, I've got a parts caster to build for Rohit, and another tailor coming in. So we'll see you soon.